In South Africa, we got an interview with Desmond Tutu, which is the highlight of my life.
Shut up! What did you ask Desmond Tutu?
We asked him 3 questions. What was it like to vote for the first time in 1994 as a black man and have a black man be elected president? This was while Barack Obama was running, so this was genius.
Yeah.
And he leaned in and said, what was it like the first time you fell in love? Which is my favorite answer anyone has ever given me.
You're listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. This is the podcast where I talk to successful women in entertainment and hear their stories. Our presenting sponsor is the entertainment payroll company, Extreme Reach. They have the most comprehensive suite of tools and services to support all areas of media and content creation, from tax incentive support to accounting software and payroll services. They're an incredibly innovative company. If you are creating content, you need them. Call them and tell them I sent you. Today I interviewed Jenny Bucos. Jenny is a multi-award-winning director and producer of the long-running program called Project Explorer and the founder of ProjectExplorer.org, which is a free multimedia website designed to educate kids about global cultures and histories. She has explored 6 continents in over 500 episodes and has met incredible people and seen amazing places. She is currently working on a television show to bring this programming to an even wider audience. Jenny is incredibly purpose-driven, an explorer, an entrepreneur, and is living her mission every day. I am very inspired by her, and I'm sure you will be too. You can find us at theother50%.com for added features, photos, show notes, and the merchandise. You can also listen on Apple Podcasts and all the podcast places. If you haven't already, check out the Kiss My Age show, which is where women of a certain vintage, grown-ups, talk about anything and everything and all the things that matter. It's hosted by Lasse Drakovic, Karen Samuelson, and me. We laugh, we cry, we laugh some more. All right, here's my conversation with Jenny Bucos. Have a listen.
What do you do?
I run an organization called Project Explorer. It's a children's educational charity, but I'd like to say I'm a storyteller, a producer, and an explorer.
I love it. Let's talk about that project first. Yes.
So Project Explorer, I founded it in 2003. Mm-hmm. I think we need to back up a little bit.
Yes, please.
My first job was at Credit Suisse First Boston. I did recruiting for a global investment bank. And 3 months into my job, they said to me, would you like to go to Hong Kong and Tokyo? And I said, I've never been out of the country. I would love to go to Hong Kong and Tokyo.
That sounds fun.
23 years old, they hand me a passport and they drop me in a country. And I hated it. I didn't understand how to navigate a foreign country and culture. No one had ever said, learn how to say please and hello and thank you in another language. Talk to the concierge if you get in trouble.
Oh, you're just totally unprepared?
Totally unprepared. 23 years old, pre-having internet in my house. So there were no travel guides that I accessed.
Where did you grow up?
In a town of 800 people called Fonda, New York. One blinking traffic light, everybody went to school in the same building. Tiny, tiny little farming town.
So from there, you went to New York City?
Went to Boston for school.
Okay.
And then straight to New York City and got married, a week out of university.
So that must have blown your mind, first of all.
Yes.
And then dropped in Hong Kong.
Yes.
Completely unprepared.
Completely unprepared.
Okay, what'd you do?
Cried in my hotel room a lot. Again, didn't have Skype, couldn't communicate with my husband. At the time, we were newly married.
And he was back in New York?
He was back in New York. 6 months of being completely miserable. Came back, continued to do my job in New York for about a year and a half, and then September 11th hit. Lost my job and got this huge severance package, and I started to think, I have all this money and a passport now. What do I want to do with my life? And I said, travel can't be that bad. Let's use the severance package and start to travel the world. And we went to 2 places, my husband and I. We went to England and Greece, and it completely changed everything.
Okay, back up.
I know this is a lot.
When you were in college, did you think, I'm going into banking and investment and finance? Or were you thinking, did you have any inkling of filmmaking?
No, I was a theater major. I thought I wanted to do theater producing. And I realized you needed your own money to do that.
Right.
So I moved to New York, like every other theater major in the world, and got a temp job. And that's how I fell into investment banking. So I fell into one thing, and then, as you'll find out, I fell into the next.
Yeah.
So we started traveling, and it was really, for me, it was in Athens, standing at the Parthenon, thinking, I'm standing somewhere I read about in school, and I never thought that that was going to be my story.
Amazing.
And I was completely bit by the travel bug, and I started to think how different a child's education would be if they could be exposed to the things that they read in these stale textbooks. I came back and I said, this is what I'm going to do with my life. I'm going to give every child possible, especially children like me who grew up in these tiny little towns, the opportunity to see the world beyond their borders.
And you were thinking at that time, I'm going to make a video series?
I had no idea how I was going to do it.
Because this was, you just said pre-internet.
It wasn't pre-internet. It was mass internet.
Like everybody having internet
everybody
everywhere?
had it. Like there was no Wi-Fi for me. Like I couldn't afford a laptop at that time.
Yeah, like you had it at work.
You had it at work and you used an intranet, really. You didn't really use the internet. I wrote a letter, because I'm a big fan of writing letters, and I'm very naive, to Michael Palin from Monty Python, and said, my global education was because of you. I used to watch these PBS series that you did, and you were the reason I took this step and agreed to go to Hong Kong and agreed to go to Japan. I would like to come work for you.
Oh my God.
His office called me 3 days later and said, we think you should look into something brand new that the BBC is doing called BBC Online Learning, and maybe consider doing that for kids. So I started Project Explorer because of that advice 2 years before YouTube existed. And yeah, I know, this is big. This is big.
Did you go work for BBC, or did you just look at what they were doing and think?
I looked at what they were doing.
And you're like, that's the model of what I'm going to do for kids.
I'm like, I can do this for kids. I can do online video for kids.
How hard could it be?
There was no YouTube at the time. I was 2 years before YouTube.
So how were they going to see it? Like on your website?
On my website.
Did you know how to build a website?
My ex-husband, now ex-husband, knew how to build a website. So we did the whole thing together in our apartment on a Mac.
Well, that was handy. Okay, so
This is a lot of information on how we got to where we got.
How did you start?
I wrote a letter. I can't say the actor's name now because he's been part of the Me Too movement, but he was very generous to me at the time. I wrote a letter. He was working in England at the time, and I said, I have this idea. I'd like to do virtual field trips for students to teach them about the world beyond their community. So let's pick a country where I can speak the language, because I don't speak another language. Let's pick a country where I know the subject matter and it won't be controversial. So he's a stage actor, and I said, let's do the life and times of William Shakespeare, because Shakespeare is something that's taught in every school, but nobody really looks at like the politics for kids or the science for kids or the botany or the mathematics behind it. So
where did he live? And
where did he live? And where did he grow up in school? And what did he eat at the time? And how did he get around? And wrote this actor a letter, and within a week he said, why don't you get on a plane and fly over to England and meet with me? He wound up funding the first project.
Amazing.
So it's been a series of letters.
Are you just asking?
Just asking. But not just asking. I think there's something to be said for sitting down and writing a letter to someone and saying, I have this idea. Would you be willing to have a conversation with me? I never asked this actor for money. I never asked him for assistance. I just knew his position and his background. He might be interested in doing something like this.
So you wrote him a pen letter?
I wrote him a pen letter.
Was he involved in any other way besides writing a check?
Yes. It's now been scrubbed from the website. But he's not the only actor. Right out of the gate, Mark Rylance worked with us. He was the artistic director at the Globe at the time, and then he went on to do Bridge of Spies, Big Friendly Giant.
Yeah.
Mark Rylance, essentially before he was like American famous Mark Rylance, took part in this. We had the artistic director from the Royal Shakespeare Company do this. We had somebody who's been on Doctor Who agree to do that. I mean, just really big names who said, this is free education for any student anywhere in the world, and they can access it from their computer. Absolutely, I'm in.
And so would they give you tours? Would you interview them?
I would interview them. Some of them did monologues from Shakespeare and then would help break it down and how they understood it. We just had access to anything.
Amazing. So how many episodes was that first batch?
First series was 20 episodes. It was all done on tape because this is pre
Is it like an 8mm camera?
No, they were like mini DV tapes. I had never filmed, I had never produced, I had never scripted, I had never written a website. So I would literally be standing on the streets of London with like the guidebook of how to use my camera.
So you were filming it?
I was filming it.
Editing, doing the interviews, writing, putting it all together?
and coordinating a small crew to go and paying for their meals and keeping the receipts and booking everything. And that was the only way I knew how to create content because I hadn't gone to film school. So I just
figured it out.
I just did what I thought needed to get done. And wrote a lot of letters to say, would you be part of this? And everyone said yes.
Amazing.
With no bio. I would just say, can I come interview you at the Royal Shakespeare Company? Would you like to do this? Yes.
Incredible. So how did you launch it?
God, this is back in 2005. I mean, it was a tiny little website. We basically launched it, and I cold called schools and said, will you please check this out? And really no one wanted to look at it because video was new in the classroom, and schools and teachers thought they were going to get charged for it. They're like, there's no way this could possibly be free. Nobody would do this and make this.
Because that's crazy.
That's crazy. Why would you give this away? And then that all changed the next year. So the first year we had about 40,000 users, and that was all through word of mouth and some press. And I got some local press in New York City, and that's a big market, so that's easy to get some press.
Well, it's funny how you say like, oh, it's just 40,000, but that's a huge launch for something that's completely unknown.
There are 50 million American school children now, so that's a tiny, tiny number.
Yeah, okay.
Tiny number. And there are a million New York City public school children, so 40,000 is not that many.
No, but it's a good start.
It's a good start. It's a good start. But when you have names like Mark Rylance attached to it, and then the British Museum and the National Archives, like that helps you.
For sure. You're legit.
That's street cred.
Yeah, for sure.
The second program we did, I followed a playwright to South Africa. I saw a play at Lincoln Center, and it was about the Truth and Reconciliation hearings after the fall of apartheid. And I was like, how was I in university and I didn't know about this? So I wrote this actor a letter, dropped it off backstage, and said, I'm doing this thing. I would like to come to South Africa next. Never been to the African continent, know nothing about the country. He immediately called me and said, what can I do to help you? And it turns out he's the founder of the Apartheid Museum and a former speechwriter for Nelson Mandela. So I sort of had the keys to the kingdom at that point.
So much for not being political or controversial.
Right.
Now you were like, okay, let's just dive in.
Right. So we had access to people like musicians Mariam Makeba and Hugh Masekela, who have now since passed. So they were in my second series. We had Winnie Mandela in my second series, who has now since passed. But the beautiful thing about South Africa is so many of the storytellers are still alive, or they were still alive when I was doing this. And presenting them with, we're not Americans trying to come in and tell your story. We're just going to ask you the questions, and we're going to let you tell your story to the world.
Yeah.
And again, pre-YouTube, everyone was on board. So that year we went from 40,000 viewers to 2.5 million with absolutely no marketing because of the caliber of people that got involved. Oprah Magazine caught wind of it, and we got a story, and that was it for us. After that, it just...
Oprah does just make these things happen. Okay, let's talk about you and your experience while you're doing this. Like, tell me about the moment where you paused and were like, oh my God, what is happening? Like, did you have those moments of, this is bigger than I thought it was going to be?
I think that came for me in South Africa. That was 2007. And 15 years doing this, I keep coming back to that moment that these people trusted me to share their stories. They didn't know how I was going to edit it. They had no idea what I was going to do. But sitting down with these people, I'm like, I think I'm onto something. I have the ability I don't have the ability to change the world, but I have the ability to share stories that have the power to change the world. And to do it for kids, it really was that moment. And then when I shared, we had to send everything on DVD at the time because South Africa didn't have the bandwidth to watch what I was doing. We sent copies to everyone who had worked with us on DVD. And the gentleman I was talking about, his name's John Connie, and we're now lifelong friends. I see him all the time. I'm friends with his whole family. He watched it, and I was so nervous. I wanted to impress him. I wanted him to get it and be inspired. Yeah. And I called him after he got it and I said, "Did you enjoy it?" And he said, "I watched it twice." He's like, "You reminded me of things that I forgot about my own country." And he said, "And then I sat down and I watched it with my children."
Beautiful.
And that was it right there for me. I'm like, this is everything I'm going to do for the rest of my life.
Yeah.
I don't know how I figured out that I had the ability to do this for kids. I have no idea. I fell into it.
I think you really don't have a choice in this life.
I don't have a choice now.
Right?
Yeah.
Because it sounds like the paths open up pretty easily for you trying to do this.
The paths to get access to the people and the places and the themes that I want to get access to open very easily. The funding, not so much. Yeah, I'm not sure what it is. Somebody asked me a few weeks ago, they were interviewing for a board position. And this is, I'm in my 15 and a half years of doing this now. And they said, "What's the secret ingredient to the success of Project Explorer?" And it just dawned on me that it may be my personal story. Like the secret ingredient may be me. And I know that's a very boastful thing to say, but it took me 15 years to get to that.
Yeah, no, explain that.
I'm creating content for me as a child.
Yeah.
For me growing up in an all-white community, for me growing up in an all-Catholic community with the exception of my family. For me growing up as a 12-year-old thinking, someday I want to see something bigger than my hometown.
Yeah.
Someday I just want to get on a plane and go somewhere. And I think that's the secret ingredient, is having that passion and that drive to change the life of a child like me.
Now, what do you think is that, because some people will grow up in that environment and thinks that that's all there is and that's right, and why do you need to learn anything else? Why do you think you had that different perspective?
I was just a weird kid. I'm not
right?
entirely sure. I was curious, and I think, that's what education is. That's what being a global citizen is. It's just being curious about the world around you. I'm not sure why I was like that. I can't answer that question. I don't know. I just am. I didn't know people who traveled, so I don't know why. But really interesting thing I remembered about my childhood growing up is we would go to the mall as teenagers, and my mom would take off with my sister and brother, and they would go into a store, and I'd say, "I'm going to go into Express and look at clothing." But I would go to Liberty Travel next door, and I would get brochures, and I would bring them home, and I would hide them under my bed, wanting to see the world was something to be ashamed of, because I knew that wasn't going to be part of my story growing up in an economically depressed area in a farming community.
Yeah.
And when my parents weren't around, I would get the phone book and I would call TWA and price out tickets to Paris. Because again, this is pre-internet. So I knew when I was 13, it was $800 to fly round trip from JFK to Paris. So that it was always there.
Yeah.
And I'm now on my 75th country, and every time I go somewhere, every time I get my passport stamped, I can't believe that that's my life. That I made this happen, and I'm not the only one who can do this. If you've got the desire, you can do this.
Now, are you able to articulate in a simple way, why is this important? Why does it matter?
Why does global education matter? We are members of the human race first and members of countries second, and our problems are global in nature. Access to clean water. We want to be healthy. We want to live longer. We want to save the planet. This is things we all share this in common. So why wouldn't you give kids the bigger picture so they understand that their choices don't just impact their community, they impact the global community? And especially now when you can pick up the phone, or when you can get on Facebook, or when you can get on Twitter and talk to anyone anywhere, we're increasingly connected. And I know that's very cliche, but we are.
But it's true.
It is true.
Do you find a difference with the kids who are your audience now, say, compared to 15 years ago?
Sadly, no.
I'm surprised.
15 years ago when I started Project Explorer, there was a need for global education in the light of 9/11. That people wanted programs and content that promoted tolerance, respect, understanding, and I think things got better, and then in the last 2 years they got worse. So there's a very high demand for it, but there's also a lot of criticism. And it's the same criticism that I was drawing 15 years ago when I started this, saying, how dare you teach my children that Islam is a peaceful religion? Or how dare you teach my children that immigrants positively impact a society? And these are the same themes that I'm doing today.
And they've sprouted up again.
They've sprouted up again. 15 years later. 2 years ago, I thought, what have I been doing for a decade if this has not changed? I know that's frustrating, but I think there's a need for it now more than ever.
Oh, for sure. But do people go out of their way to comment to you? Like, how dare you?
Absolutely.
Oh, we have such a problem. Oh my God. Yeah, because I don't understand like education being the enemy. Like,
And we do it from a story, like I said before, a storytelling perspective. We try not to take, my political views are my political views, and my board and my volunteers and my team, they're very much aligned with my thinking. But we try not to put our editorial spin on it. So for example, when we did our series on Mexico, we interviewed people on the full spectrum of immigration, from not a single person should come in to every single person should come in. And then the lesson around that is discuss this as a class. Debate this.
Yeah. What does everyone think?
And I can tell you, there were some people that it was difficult to sit and interview them because they were so against, but I knew that was important to present that full story.
So you have to just stay open and let them say their piece?
Yeah.
And then walk away and
then
scream
walk
into
away.
your pillow?
Yeah. Yeah.
Tell me about the honor you got from the White House.
Oh, you've done some research.
A little bit.
This is great because this is letter writing. I have a relationship with a school here in Brooklyn. And when I go into schools, I ask teachers and students what content they want me to screen, because I've done like 500 of these episodes now. So we screened some content from South Africa, and this was a high school. And there was like a 15-year-old who stood up and said, "Does President Obama know what you're doing? Because I bet you he'd be proud." And I said, "That's really interesting. Why don't you write him a letter?" And about 6 months later, I got an email from the White House, and I thought it was spam. It came in at 10 o'clock at night, because it's like some intern or volunteer or staff member that's doing this. That said, you've been selected as a champion of change for your community. Do you accept this, and would you like to come to the White House? And I didn't answer it for 3 days because I thought it was a joke.
Yeah.
I'm like, somebody figured out how to do this to me. And then they followed up, and then I found out that it was this classroom that had written letters to President Obama.
God.
So it's the power of a letter, and especially when it comes from a kid. But when I went to the White House, I'm like, please tell me it was like written in crayon, because that would just be so brilliant. But I think I was less impressed with the Obama administration giving this to me, and more impressed that a student thought that what I did made a difference in their life and in their community. That meant more to me that it was kids that did it. Not a board member, not a donor, not a friend. It was students that did it.
It's amazing. And also how connected that kid felt to that president, to be like, oh, he really needs to know what you're doing.
He needs to know what I'm doing. Yeah.
I love that.
Yeah, so I always prefer the recognition that comes from parents and teachers and students to anything else I've gotten, because I know I'm on the right track.
Yeah, because that's why it matters.
That's why it matters.
That's why you're doing it.
That's why I'm doing it.
Okay, now just on a fun side, tell me about being the bug-eating vegetarian.
I'm a pescatarian.
Okay.
Bug eating. Somebody called me a bug eating genius the other day, and I was like, oh, great. That's what I'm going for. Cuisine is a great entry point for kids to learn about other countries and cultures. And I think when we're talking about culture, we usually are talking about food, because that's your heritage, that's your tradition. So I always film food wherever I go. South Africa, we filmed mopani worms. In Mexico, we did chapulines. And I always pushed it off to my presenters. I'm like, you just have to eat it. I can't do it. Just do it. And after 5 years of doing that and screening that content in schools, and kids saying to me, did you try it? I'm like, well, no, I'm a vegetarian. Well, that's not entirely true. I do eat seafood.
Yeah.
When we were in Thailand, I'm like, you know what? I think I just need to do it. If I'm going to advocate for this, for being open and things aren't gross, they're just different, that I need to at least try it. And then I could go into a school and say, I tried it, I didn't like it, but I did try it, and I just recommend you all do it. I actually happen to really like it.
What did you really like?
Crickets, they're very nutty.
Really?
Yeah, if they're roasted, it's almost like a popcorn or a peanut. They're salty and nutty. I know you're grossed out by this.
I am. I'm believing you, but I'm still... Okay.
So I started to follow this.
It's the legs that get me.
It's the legs.
It's the legs.
I started to follow this, and I've done tarantula scents, and I've done water bugs, and I've done worms. But what I advocate for is we're in the minority culturally when not eating insects. 2/3 of the world's population eats insects as a regular source of protein. And if you're looking at things from a global education perspective, like how are we going to feed the planet when we add 2 billion people in the next 20 years?
It's not Big Macs.
It's not Big Macs. It's not steak. It's not chicken. It's just not sustainable. So I do it all the time now. But the thing I do for a source of protein is cricket flour. And it tastes just like regular flour. I have 2 bags in my kitchen right now.
What do you make with it?
A lot of sweets, but you can also do like battered fish with it. You can get a protein powder and put it in shakes. So for a vegetarian, it is so smart to boost your protein.
Yeah.
Yeah.
With crickets. All right, you
With
heard
crickets.
it here.
Yeah, I might have to send you home with a bag.
Great.
But, kids are fearless. And if they see, like, a little white girl do it, like me, like, you're going to have, like, a 12-year-old boy that says, like, well, if she can do it, I can do it. And you'd be really surprised how many kids will try it and will embrace it.
Amazing.
It is amazing. I still have a hard time with the worms, but I will do it.
Working on it?
I'm working on it. Cricket flour is the best way to go. They make cricket protein bars.
Seriously?
They make, I make chocolate chirp cookies with the flour, so not chocolate chip, but chocolate chirp. They make crackers out of cricket protein, and you wouldn't know. If I didn't tell you, you wouldn't know.
All right, I can get on board with the cricket flour.
Yeah.
I can get on board with that. I heard you say tarantula. I'm nowhere near getting on board with that.
I didn't like the tarantula.
Do they cut it up?
No.
I mean, you're not... Oh, no.
I'll send you pictures.
No, I don't even want to see the pictures. If I see tarantula pictures float by on Facebook, I have to unfollow that person.
That's
I can't
how I
even.
am with snakes.
God,
Well,
no.
do you eat packaged foods?
Yes.
Or, then you're eating bugs anyhow.
I'm sure.
That's sort of how I justify it. Like, and chocolate and peanut butter are like the 2 worst offenders.
No.
Yeah. Yep. So I'd
All right,
rather
you're ruining everything
I'd
right
rather
now.
choose and be empowered than
Accidentally eat bugs in your chocolate.
My niece is super funny. She's 5, and my sister's been telling her that I eat insects, and she doesn't believe me. And she came down, and I showed her the cricket flour, and now she's like very worried about me. So like they go around their house, and if there's a dead fly, she's like, "Don't throw it away, Mom. Jenny might want to eat it." So she knows.
That's hilarious. Tell me what it... Oh God, there are 2 things I want to ask you right now. So your organization, you've built up to where you have a board of directors. Tell me about the structure of your company that you've made.
I mean, very relevant for this. We're 75% women all around.
Well done.
It's just awesome. I'm so proud of that.
Yeah.
And it wasn't by design. Those were the most qualified people. To be a nonprofit, you have to have a board of directors from inception. So I started out as having friends, and then I realized, okay, I really need people who can help me grow this organization. We use something, and I mean, this is very interesting. We use something called Board Assist, which is like a board dating service, where you put your profile in, and Board Assist matches you with people who are looking for boards. So you sort of say, like, I focus on global education, culture. We're doing a lot with women in STEM right now in our videos. And there's a financial contribution, and then you put in how many meetings a year and what skill set you're looking for, and they'll come back to you with like all these CVs from people like Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan and HBO and Google, and say, who do you want to meet? So this is how we've built our board, and I'd say 95% of my board of directors have come from this matching service. It is genius.
How big is your board?
We have 12 people on the senior board and 15 people on a junior board.
And what do they do differently?
Senior board is responsible for governance and driving. They are the keepers of the mission. The junior board is a new thing, so it's people under 30. And if you're doing education programs for kids that are tech savvy, let's bring in people who are under 30.
Yeah.
They understand what media should look like. They're a generation closer to when I was in school.
Yeah.
But my board they're a working board. We're an organization of 2 people, aside from the production, which are all freelancers. They do everything. I mean, they do research, they plan events. Without them, my organization is not possible. they're the most effective ambassadors for what I do. So it's their time, their skill set, their money, their networks.
Amazing.
And these people all have high-paying, high-demand full-time jobs, and then they do this in addition to that.
I bet they're so
nothing.
happy to do it.
I'd like to hope so. Yeah, I think they are. Yeah, they're incredible. Both groups are incredible. But we have an all-female executive committee, which is the first time that's happened. So we had a board chair recently resign, and it was women who stepped up and said, "Will you consider me?" So I love it.
Fantastic.
Yeah, it's great.
Now, what is next for you on the programming front?
So after 15 years, we're now filming a TV series.
Woohoo!
Same thing, global education, global understanding, awareness.
How long are the episodes?
30 minutes.
So that's very different from what you've been doing.
It's a nightmare for me. It's like my worst nightmare. I'm like, I know how to do things 5 minutes and under. And I'm really good. I can be like, I can distill like the World War II in 3 minutes for you.
Yeah.
Because that quite honestly is what, like, that's not only a child's attention span, that's an adult's attention span now.
Yeah. And that's an amazing skill to be able to condense it like that.
Yeah.
So are you taking that amount of material and spreading it out over half an hour, or would you do like jam-packed full of information?
It's I can walk you through an episode. So each episode answers one profound question of our time.
Ooh, like what?
So our first episode we filmed in Berlin, and the question is, do walls work? Not political at all. And we look at the history of the Berlin Wall.
That seems like a quick answer.
Yep. We look at the history of the Berlin Wall and what's different to what we're talking about in today's political climate is the Berlin Wall divided one city, one people. Mm-hmm. It was not, we're not talking different cultures, we're not talking different languages. One city, one people, families, friends, split overnight.
Yeah.
And then when the Berlin Wall fell, what did that create? It created one of the most free cities on the planet. So we follow the history of the Berlin Wall to why Berlin and Germany have accepted over 600,000 refugees, mostly from Syria. So we do a day in the life of a Syrian refugee family. Very, very powerful. And then
I can see why people are getting mad at you.
Yeah. But, the series is, if you think it's about another culture, then it's about another culture. Uh-huh. But if you see yourself in it, then that's the subtle message that I'd like to get across. I don't know if my production partners think that, but I'd like to think they do.
I think the more that you can show, these are people just like you and me. I mean, that's most of the battle.
Yeah. And then our second episode we filmed in Israel, and it's in a world of conflict, how do we live in peace? And if you're going to look at a topic like that, why not go to Israel, Palestine?
Oh my God. Okay, so who did you bring in to talk to for that?
We feature, we try to feature youth in everything. So it's solution-driven television, and it's all youth that are working to build peace. So we did a quadcopter building club with Arab, Jewish, Muslim, Druze, Christian children that all come together and they build every single day. So when we build together, peace is possible. Mm-hmm. We did something called Surfing for Peace, which is a multi-faith, multicultural surf club. When we play together, peace is possible.
Isn't there a soccer camp like that too?
Yep, absolutely. And then we did an interfaith Shabbat dinner with a Palestinian chef and a Jewish chef. And when we break bread together, peace is possible. Mm-hmm. So we're presenting solutions to these questions. Which I love. And there's nothing like that for kids on TV.
You're going to save the world.
Or inspire the kid that will save the world. That's my goal, is really like give them that information that they can take and innovate to address our biggest challenges.
Because if you can see it, you can be it.
Absolutely.
Amazing. Now I have to ask you, what do you make of this moment in time for women?
For women. In this industry, it's still incredibly disappointing for me. Mm-hmm. I would like to see more, obviously, I'd like to see more women in this industry. I find...
Now, when you say this industry, are you meaning entertainment, education?
No, not education, because most teachers are women. I'd say entertainment. I'm very fortunate not only for my board and my junior board to be mostly women, the production we're working on is mostly women as well. But I know for me, and because I didn't grow up in the industry, I created my own thing and then I just went to television. Mm-hmm. I have found myself making apologies for things that I shouldn't apologize for, and being the nice person and not speaking up. And if that's my experience, that has to be other people's experience too.
For sure, it's other people's experience. Like, what do you mean by apologizing for things? Like
So,
for walking into the room, for speaking?
One of the first things I filmed, somebody said to me, "Oh, it's like a little girl gang filming." And I was thinking about that the other day, and I was like, I'm a woman who has built an audience of 6 million kids from nothing. Like, please don't call me a little girl gang.
So dismissive.
But I never would have said that 15 years ago to that person. And now I'm like, well, I'm going to say it because I know where my next job is coming from. But before, I was really worried that I wouldn't get to the next interview, or I wouldn't get the next job, or I wouldn't get the funding. I had an interviewee tell me to take my top off in the middle of an interview.
Come on.
And I didn't know what to say. So I just let it go because I'm like, well, I need this interview to finish this story.
Right, let's pretend that didn't happen.
So let's pretend it didn't happen. And now, and I think that's where we are women-wise, that people will say, enough is enough. Like, that's not okay. 5 years ago, I didn't know to do that. And I think there are a lot of women who have stepped up and shown me that that's okay to do that now. To say, that's not acceptable.
Isn't it funny that it's just now occurring to everybody we can say something.
We can say something and not be fired, or...
Yeah. It took a long time to get there.
The little things on set, I don't let people call me like sweetie or girl or darling anymore. And I think all of the things in the last 2 years have I stop people. I'm like, that's not acceptable. I'm the EP on this show. Like, I'm not sweetie or darling. I've had people who have
people working for you are calling you that.
Not the people working for me, but people that we collaborate with in other countries or, yeah.
How is it going into countries that where the women may not be quite as free as we are here? How does that go over?
I haven't really filmed in any of those for a while. I filmed in Jordan with the Bedouin, and there were 2 men on my crew, another woman and myself. And they slaughtered a goat for us, and they took us around the desert for the day. And then when it came time to pay them, they went to my male employees. And I'm like, but I'm the boss. You have to talk to me. And the guide said, well, that's not what we do. We don't deal with women. I'm like, if you want to get paid, you have to talk to me. And it was a struggle for him. He kept going back to the guy. I'm like, he's not going to pay you. And this guy's like, well, just give me the money and I'll pay him. I'm like, that's not the point. And I understand we need to respect their culture, but they also need to respect that I'm the boss.
Yeah.
I've kind of avoided countries like that for quite a while now. But also, we've been an all-female film crew since 2011, so there is no guy to go to on these. Just pick the one you want. One of us will take care of you. But I haven't been in places that are recently to do work that are male driven. My field producer is a female, so she's in charge of everything when we're on location. Our story writer is a female. I mean, you just have to deal with it at this point. But we're also very careful with who we pick as our local storytellers now.
Tell me more.
So before, without having this huge team of researchers, I was kind of given whoever the tourism board or the Ministry of Culture thought I should talk to. And a lot of times they are men. Heads of museums, tour guides, experts. Other countries are going to give you men, and this is part of how things are changing.
Yeah.
And when we started doing this television show, I made it very clear that I wanted youth, minorities, and as many women as possible. Because if you're a child, what you see on television needs to reflect you. And I can't have all middle-aged men on camera as experts.
Yeah.
So I'm like, give me the 25-year-old, don't give me the curator of the museum, give me the intern who knows just as much about the subject area we're discussing. So when you have a team of 14 people working for you, you just have more resources to find those people.
Yeah. I love that you're so deliberate in keeping with the mission at every level.
I mean, I think you have to be. Yeah.
How do you prepare for a season or an episode?
TV's a completely different beast. But the first 3 TV episodes that we've picked, so Berlin, Israel, Palestine, and then we just did New York City, and that's about urban sustainability. These are themes that I've explored in the shorter form for 5 to 10 years, so they were very easy for me to sort of identify. Yeah. For preparing for a web series, Web series are driven by who's going to pay for it. So if a tourism board comes to me, because we're a nonprofit, if a tourism board comes to me and says we will cover airfare, guide, driver, hotel, meals, well, more than half of that episode is funded. Then it's called all 6 months in before you go, basically becoming a consultant on that country. How much can I learn? How much can I absorb on that country? And then you go film it, and then you come back, you edit it, and then it's on to the next. So
how do you even choose where to focus, who to talk to? I mean, because it's going into a country, there's a billion things you could focus on.
Right.
How do you?
We have a whole network of volunteer teachers that I say, we're going to Azerbaijan. And then you get teachers who come back and they say, I don't even know where that is.
Let's start
and
there.
I said, okay, imagine we're going to the former Soviet Union. What are the things that you would like to bring into the classroom? And then they give me topics or themes that they're already teaching. So we're sort of crowdsourcing those ideas from teachers, which is brilliant because you know it's already going to be used.
Yeah.
So I'd say about 80% of it is planned and scripted. We script everything before we go. And that's because we do everything for 3rd to 12th grade. So even throwing in the word like evolution for a 3rd grader, you have to now explain that in the script. So we have to be very careful, very deliberate in everything we do when it's for education.
So you're scripting your narration, but are you scripting your interviews?
Yeah.
Oh, so you're pre-interviewing people and...
Yes. Which for a team of like 3 people is a massive amount of work.
Yeah.
And each country yields between 10 and 20 episodes. 10 and 25-minute episodes filmed in 2 weeks.
Okay, that's
I mean,
a lot.
we like run in, hit it, and leave.
Yeah.
And then, the other 20% are things we find on the fly. So
I was going to say, how much room is there for discovery if you're writing it before you go?
Yeah. You just have to know what the theme is. So like when we sat in South Africa, we got an interview with Desmond Tutu, which is the highlight of my life.
Shut up!
And we were told we had 15 minutes with him. You better know what those 3 questions are because you have 15 minutes with him. There was no wiggle room there.
What did you ask Desmond Tutu?
We asked him 3 questions. What was it like to vote for the first time in 1994 as a black man and have a black man be elected president? This was while Barack Obama was running, so this was genius.
Yeah.
And he leaned in and said, what was it like the first time you fell in love? Which is my favorite answer anyone has ever given me. So we talked about that for 4 minutes. Then we asked him, what is Ubuntu? And that's the spirit that we're all connected as human beings, and what happens to me happens to you because it's wrapped up in our humanity. So when I said we're all members of we're all global citizens before we're national citizens, that's really the essence of what I'm talking about, Ubuntu. It's beautiful. It's a beautiful, beautiful, beautiful philosophy.
I love that.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, and what was the other one?
What does it mean to you to be a global citizen?
What did he say?
That one, I can't remember because the other 2 were so powerful, and it was 10 years ago. So I'd have
I'm
to
sure
go
by
back.
that point you're having an out-of-body experience.
He also asked me to have
being there.
tea with him, so yes.
Oh my God.
It's just beautiful, beautiful answers. But, a lot of people, because we don't come in and we do it very, very small. It's a small footprint. It's just 2 little cameras, a mic kit. Most people will say, look, I've got a half an hour for you, because we're really dealing with high-profile people. And sometimes once you get into it, they say, well, I'll give you the whole day, and then you run with it. But that's why most of it does have to be scripted. We do find little moments, we do find little B-roll things that we didn't expect. Or like when we're in the archives, we'll pick out 3 things from the archives, and then the curator will say, well, let me show you my favorite thing. And then you have to go down that rabbit hole. But yeah, TV allows more room for flexibility, I think. Longer format.
I know the answer to this. Is this the funnest job you've ever had?
Well, yes.
Like, is it even a job?
Absolutely, because there's still the back end. I'm still the chief fundraiser. I still do the taxes. We've basically exploded in the last 6 months to the point where the creative content has been 10x'd, and we've got the co-production team to make that happen, but the nonprofit has not been 10x'd, so I'm now doing 3 to 4 jobs, which we're trying to figure out how to get the structure to match the creative side of it, which is a challenge. We just sat down like 5 days ago to figure that out.
Where do you see your organization 5 years from now?
5 years from now. This is this.
Have you done your plan?
This is the session we just had.
Yeah.
TV series running indefinitely. I'd like to think that there's a room for smart television, and the TV series also generates web content, so we're not abandoning that. They're complementing each other. I would love to take our library of 500 episodes and have it translated to the 10 most used languages in the world to become the first truly global education resource in the world.
Yes. What do you need to have that happen?
We need a funder for each language. It's not that much money because there are services that do this, but I need somebody to come in and say, let's do it in Spanish. Okay. Let's do it in Arabic. Let's do it in German. Somebody out there has to know how to do that.
Of course.
And because it's already been produced, like, it's so minimal.
It's done. That should be easy.
And I would like to be like the next global name in education. Like really move this to the forefront of the conversation. I think global understanding is the skill set that we are not talking about for our kids, and without it, we're being left behind.
For sure.
Yeah.
If you had an ask and there was a chance someone listening could provide it, what would it be?
An ask? Well, every good nonprofit leader has to have an ask.
I know you have one.
We're 2 episodes shy of finishing our first season. We would love to have a title sponsor, and I know that's a big ticket item, but this is bold, important, inspiring television for kids, and I'd like to think that there is a place for it out there. There was when I was a child, and we've sort of abandoned that in television. So I'd love to think that somebody would say, yes, absolutely, let's do it. And then, simply, we would love to hire a part-time director of operations to support me and to make the organization sustainable. This is not a big ticket item. This is our biggest need right now, though.
Yeah.
To just allow me to focus on the creative founder side and let somebody come in who really knows how to take charge and just get it done. All the little things that we've been trying to get done for 15 years, but because we haven't had the funding, we can't.
Let's put your time where it's best used.
Yes. I'm not good at doing taxes. I don't want to do them anymore.
Enough with the taxes.
Yes.
Let's explore Zimbabwe.
Yeah.
What have I not asked you about that I should have asked you about?
Well, I'd love to tell you who's involved in the television show with me.
Okay.
Yes, so the television show is called Crash Test World, and I'm so excited when we were looking. I mean, this is 15 years in the making, and this has always been my vision. Carrie Byron from Mythbusters is hosting it, so I love that we found a mom, a smart woman who is an artist, is a science expert to put in front of the camera. I mean, like,
fantastic.
What an awesome role model to have. And I didn't think she'd do it. I didn't think I was big enough, and I called her, and she shot the first episode and said, this is what I want to do for the next 10 years of my life. She gets it. She's like, this is important television, and it has the ability to change the world.
Fantastic.
And then our co-production team is Andrew Zimmern from Bizarre Foods. So I really hit the jackpot on this. I can't believe somebody who makes their first show gets to work with these people. I mean, we've got like Emmy award-winning journalists and story producers and people who've worked for the BBC and CNN. And
amazing.
It's astonishing that this team has come together. So we just want to get it done.
It's fantastic.
Yeah.
So, can we talk about you're funding this television show completely, and then you have distribution?
Yeah, so we have distribution. I can't say the network, but we do. We have guaranteed primetime distribution starting in the spring. And rather than going the traditional model where the network gives you part of the money and you have to go get investors, we decided to fund the whole thing philanthropically. And what that allows us to do is we retain complete ownership of everything.
Smart.
And creative control. So the network said, absolutely, if you bring it to us, we'll air it as long as it meets our standards. So we're filming the television show, which is the 30-minute format. And then in conjunction with that, we're doing anywhere between 8 and 12 webisodes. So that's sort of like the deep dive into the materials that we're doing. And then there's curriculum packets on the end of that. There's a whole network that supports educators to incorporate this content into the classroom, because it's very irresponsible to just drop it with a teacher if they don't understand how to teach this content. So it's a little different. It's more like the PBS model.
Yeah.
And I think owning your content is so powerful.
Huge. Yeah.
It's so powerful these days. So the TV show has been supported by its major foundations that came on board and said, absolutely, I get your vision, let's go for it. And it's not necessarily the TV that they're interested in, it's the web content, but the TV enables the web content. Because when you're an organization of 2 people, you can only do 1 location a year.
Yeah.
With a TV crew, you can do 13 locations a year.
Yeah.
So it really allows us to, I mean, it's a 10x of our mission.
It's amazing what little money can do.
It's amazing what a little money can do. Yeah.
Sometimes I have a little tray in my house.
I know.
It says sometimes all you need is $1 billion.
Exactly. Well, in my case, $1 million, but
sometimes same thing.
yes.
Can I ask you about your parents?
My parents?
Yeah.
My parents are lovely.
What do they make of all this?
I don't think well, my mom was a teacher. My mom was a first grade teacher for her entire life. So when I say I'm creating content for me, I'm also creating content with my mom taught in the school that I went to.
Yeah.
And she would say to me, I wish we had this when I was teaching. I'm like, you didn't have the internet. There was no way for you to have this.
Would have been film strips with a little ding.
Oh, I had film strips. We had overhead projectors.
Yeah,
Like we had all that stuff. So my mom immediately got it. And especially because it was free and it was just easy for her. My dad, not so much. My dad worked for the Department of Agriculture, and it was very much like the people, and I hope he's not offended when he listens to this, saying, well, I live in America, and kids should learn about America first. And I'm like, well, it's not a zero-sum game. You can do both. He's got two stories. He now in retirement taps maple syrup and sells maple syrup for a living. And they had some potential Russian clients looking at Vermont and upstate New York maple syrup. And he went online and did my Russian language lesson and impressed the pants off of the Russian people when he's like, I get it. He's like, I get it. He's like, because they came here to buy something and I could speak Russian. And he's like, and the people in Vermont couldn't. So I think that helped him win that. And then the other day they got to see the Berlin episode. So they were one of the few people I sent the link to, and I was so nervous. And I didn't think my dad would watch it. And he called me and he's like, look, I'm no expert in television. He's like, but you have a winner. And he's not saying that from a dad perspective because I've done 500 episodes and he's maybe seen 10 of them.
Yeah.
But he's like, the way you wove documentary archival news footage into a story for 12-year-olds. He's like, I learned something. I would have watched this with you as a kid. He's like, it's interesting. He sent me a text message that said more. And that is the most support I've ever been given from my father. So I know that we're like onto something.
You are onto something. And he lived through that. So he had some perspective on it.
Yeah, he did. So, I'd like to think that they'll become my biggest cheerleaders now. And because they're still in that community that I grew up with, that if that's the community I'm trying to reach, they can go out and become advocates for what I do. Yeah. And there have to be he's a grandfather now. There have to be other parents and grandfathers like him that would sit down and watch this. So, yeah, that's what my parents think. And my parents travel now. They have passports. They've been to Peru, so I inspired them to go to Peru. They're going to South Africa. They're going to Panama, usually places where I've already been, so they can ask my advice.
Yeah.
But they're looking at going to Morocco, and these are people like in their 70s now who are just brave and fearless and adventurous, and I'd like to think I had something to do with that because I was the first in the family to do it.
You helped open the world.
Yep.
Which is what you're going to do for all of us.
Hope so.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
You've been listening to The Other 50%, a herstory of Hollywood. I'm Julie Harris Walker. I'd like to thank Jenny Bukos for sharing her story. And special thanks to Jay Rowe, Danny Rosner, and Allison McQuaid for the music. Please find us on your favorite podcast provider and leave a review. And of course, on our website, theother50%.com, all spelled out in letters, for added features, bios of our guests, and the merch. You can also follow us on all the social media platforms. And also go subscribe to the Kiss My Age show. Thanks for listening. See you next time.